everyone here, so just... It looks like they muted themselves. All right, perfect. All right, so, and then provide you guys with hope. And then the next thing is to provide you guys with answers to why. Why is this going on with my kid? Why is my kid struggling through these hard times? And then providing action steps. Like the quote here says, knowledge is power. And I'm going to be giving you guys a lot of knowledge, a lot of answers, a lot of studies, a lot of research, a lot of just the science behind what's going on. But if I don't give you steps to take to start applying that, then it's really just kind of useless, that knowledge. And that's why I'm going to provide you with action steps at the very end to what you can do to help your kid going forward. So talking about childhood illnesses, we can't talk about that without going over a few stats. So a couple of the big things that we see a lot is asthma. 1 in 10 kids are struggling with asthma. And then it's costing $50 billion in costs. That's a lot of money it's costing on an annual basis. And ADHD, 1 in 9 kids are struggling with ADHD. And these are just kids that, again, have been labeled or diagnosed with these issues. Ear infections, 85% of kids will have at least 1 ear infection by the age of 3. And ear infections are so common that I actually do a whole separate talk just on ear infections, because ear infections are very common, but they're not a normal process at all. And then autism, 1 in 59. And depending on where you're looking, you may find a different number, but either way, this number is climbing fast. I mean, just about 15, 20 years ago, this number was 1 in 2,500. It has significantly increased over time. And it's not because we're getting better at diagnosing or genetics. Genetics is really, it's not a genetic thing at all. You may hear that, but genetics really does not play a factor when it comes to autism. There's something else, and we'll be discussing that in tonight. But when we combine a lot of these labels, these diagnoses of ADHD, OCD, ODD, autism, sensory processing disorder, and you lump them all into one in 5 kids are struggling or have a mental illness. I don't like to use the word mental illness, but in the medical community, that's what they use. And they say 1 in 5 kids have a mental illness. That to me is scary, and that needs to change. So what I have here is a video. The point of the video is there's 2 teams, a team in white, team in black. So the goal is to watch every single team, or watch the team in white and how many passes that they make.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? Go! The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
So jot down in the chat box if you guys did see the moonwalking bear. So right there, you can see, right, coming across, that bear walking across the screen there. So the point of that is that it's easy to miss something that you're not looking for. So there's going to be things that I'm going to be talking about tonight that are that moonwalking bear. That it's literally happening right in front of our eyes. It's happening right in front of the medical community's eyes, but we just don't think about it because it's not brought to our attention. So there's 5 steps to what we call this perfect storm that these kids are in. And not to say that every kid that has been diagnosed with ADHD or autism, or maybe you're thinking that they have that, has ADHD or autism or sensory processing disorder. It's not that they have been through every single step of these, but what we see is a lot of these kids have maybe dealt with a couple of these, be 2, 3, 4, or all 5 of them. And it all starts in that chronological order, and that starts with the fertility and pregnancy challenges. So that during that pregnancy stage, and even before that, that preconception. So of maybe struggling months to try to even get pregnant, or causing that emotional stress. And then maybe we had to go the fertility route, IVF, and then you had to get the shots, go to the visits, get more shots, visits after visits after visits, and that emotional stress then creates that. And then we get into the pregnancy. And to me, what I think is the medical community looks at pregnancy as a medical diagnosis. It's, you're pregnant, here, we're going to diagnose that, you're going to need to come see me this many times. We're going to do these tests and this. And then we always have the good old book that most moms get when they get pregnant, and that's what to expect when you're expecting. And I always like to joke somewhat that it was written by Stephen King, because it's everything that can go wrong during the pregnancy. And what that does is that kicks mom's stress into overdrive, because they're thinking, well, I kind of had something similar to that. But does that mean that this is going on? And then say maybe we went to our ultrasound, and then doctor saw something on the ultrasound. And they said, well, we saw something, but we're going to look again at your next visit, which is in 4 weeks. So what that does is mom and dad go home, and for 4 weeks, they have to sit on thinking, what did the doctor see? Was it something bad? Is this a bad thing? Is this, what's going on? So for 4 weeks, they have to go through that emotional stress. And our body, and a female's body during pregnancy, is already going through physical, chemical, and emotional stress. And then we get, say, maybe someone loses their job, so we lose that income in the house. That's a stress. Or maybe our significant other loss, or we had a death in the family. That's all these stresses that are occurring. And if mom is stressed during pregnancy, you can for sure bet that baby's stressed, because everything mom experiences, baby experiences. So if mom's perceiving everything as stress, then baby's starting to perceive its environment, its outside environment, as a hostile environment. It's imagining everything is stressful. So it starts getting into that state of stress. And then we get into the second one. And this is, I like to say, the moonwalking bear, because this is interventions and injury during labor and delivery. Interventions are anything that helps assist with the delivery. This be suction, forceps, vacuum, C-section, epidural, induction, or injury could be cord wrapped around the neck, could be breech baby, even that C-section, which is an injury. And what this does is, what we see is that 85 to 90% of you moms and dads may have gone through this process, because that's what we see is 85 to 90% of the kids that we see have had some type of either injury or intervention during that labor and delivery. Not to say that if you didn't have any injury or intervention that you're not going to have autism or ADHD or sensory processing disorder, because there's a lot of other physical stresses that can cause stress to the nervous system. Think about the walking process. Get up, fall down, get up, fall down, or running, fall over, hit their head. Those are all physical stresses. So at some point they're going to experience that. But the thing is the earlier that these kids start experiencing this state of stress on their nervous system, the more that they start developing this stress response into their nervous system. Because at 1 year, 3 years, 5 and 7 years is when most of their neurological connections are being formed, especially that first year. 80% of their neurological connections are being made in just that first year. So if all they're used to is perceiving their environment as stress, then all those neurological connections are being made as a stress response. And then what happens is we get into that, from that labor and delivery, and now we have maybe a colicky baby to a baby that can't latch, can't feed, maybe trouble sleeping, not constipated, and then they lump that into colic. So now we have a stressed colicky baby. And then we take the baby to the doctor, and the pediatrician will say, don't worry, this happens, they'll grow out of it. And that's far from it, because kids don't just grow out of constipation or colic, they grow into a stressed, sick infant and toddler. And go back to that colicky baby, there's 3 things that babies are meant to do: eat, poop, sleep. So if they're not eating, well, they're not pooping, and they're not sleeping, we have a stressed kid. And we may only have one, maybe we have all 3 of those. But then we get the stressed, sick infant and toddler who now is very still constipated potentially, or now starting to develop ear infections after ear infections, or maybe now they get chronic colds or upper respiratory infections or asthma or allergies. And then just kind of told, we'll grow out of it. And now it turns into most likely what you guys are here for, because now we get into the behavioral issues, we get into the sensory, we get into the sensory and spectrum realm. And this is where they've had so much time of that nervous system under such a state of stress that they're just stuck. They're stuck into a state of stress and they can't calm down. And how it works is we have this form that we hand out and that we go over with parents when they come in, but this is our gas first break. So we have 2 parts of our autonomic nervous system. We have our gas pedal, which is our sympathetic fight and flight state of protection. And then we have our brake pedal, which is our parasympathetic rest, relax, digest, growth and development occur there. Now, up top, you can see the RPM gauge, and you can see the trauma, the toxins, and thoughts. So tonight is mainly talking about the traumas, because as a parent, if you're on this webinar, you've most likely read every single blog, every journal article, anything that's on the web about toxins, about red dye number 40, about glycophosphate, about gluten-free, about casein, and you're right. Toxins or chemicals are toxic to the nervous system. And that is definitely part of the picture. We're talking about trauma tonight because that is something that really is that missing link is that moonwalking bear that nobody else is talking about. And what happens is the more and the earlier that these kids start experiencing these traumas, these toxins, and these emotional stresses, the more their foot gets put onto the gas pedal and the more their engine revs. And the longer that it's stuck on the gas pedal, the more that they get stuck in that state of protection and they can't get out. Now, this gas pedal part is very important when, say a bear jumps out at me. Like, I want this part of my nervous system to kick on because I'm going to run away from that bear. And I want my adrenaline to kick in. But say when I escape that bear, like, I want my body to go back to the parasympathetic, that brake pedal, where growth and development is occurring. Because if I am in a state of stress, my body's not trying to think about fighting a cold or trying to digest food. That's the last thing on its mind. My body wants to expend all of its energy on trying to protect itself. But as an individual, I want to be in that brake pedal majority of my life. As a kid, a kid wants to be, and they need to be predominantly in that brake pedal state. They need to be where growth and development are occurring most of the time. So the more that we get stuck on that gas pedal, then what we see, and the longer that they're stuck on that gas pedal, the more of those labels, diagnoses, health issues you start seeing at the bottom. The ear infections, the anxiety, the colic, the ADHD, the behavioral issues, the colds, the flus, the headaches, allergies, acid reflux. So when we talk about the nervous system, I can't talk about it without bringing up Dr. Bruce Lipton, who is a PhD cell biologist, and he stated that the function of the nervous system is to perceive the environment and coordinate the behavior of all other cells. So there's three big words on there: perceive, coordinate, and behavior. As when I'm reading this, I'm reading it left to right, and those three words stand out in that order. As a parent on this webinar, the word that probably stands out to you is behavior. And you're here because of the behavior. That's the output. That's the effect. And don't get me wrong, we need to look at that, but we need to look at how that nervous system is actually taking in the information and actually processing and perceiving that information. Because if our body, if our nervous system is perceiving our environment as stress and coordinating it as stress, that behavior is going to be those behavioral issues, or the colds, or the ear infections, all of those things, because that's an output of stress. That's the effect of a nervous system that is stressed out. And to go back to this one, which I think you can maybe see at the very bottom, there is another quote by Dr. Bruce Lipton, who said, "You can't be in growth and protection at the same time." Growth being that brake pedal, gas pedal being that protection. So if we're stuck in that gas pedal, then we're stuck in a state of protection, and growth does not occur. And so as a chiropractor, what we're looking for are these interferences, this inability for the nervous system to function the way that it was supposed to. And what we call that is a subluxation. And a subluxation, when I talk about it tonight, means stress stuck on, means our bodies are stuck in a state of stress and we can't get out. We can't get back to that rest, relax, digest. So what I'm going to go over now is the science behind really what's going on with the kids, and really what's going on and what we do this office and the impact that has. And that we're going to be talking about mainly 4 Ds, but there's a 5th D when we go over one of the cases tonight that I'll talk about. And the first D is Dys-kinesia. So kinetics or kinesia is movement or study of movement. So Dys-kinesia is abnormal movement. And when we're talking about abnormal movement in this case, we're talking about movement of the spine, or more specifically, misalignment and fixation along our spine and our back. And our spine is not just composed of bones, muscles, and ligaments. The nervous system and the brain are the 2 things that are fully enclosed by bone. That spinal cord or that spine is what protects our nervous system. So it's very essential, but if it becomes misaligned or fixated, it prevents that nervous system from functioning the way that it should. And how this occurs is with 85 to 90% of the kids that we see is here, that birth process. I know this isn't the most enjoyous image to see, and I actually have a video too, and trust me, it doesn't get any better after watching it multiple times, but this is something that we need to be more aware of. It's something that, again, like I said, is happening right in front of our eyes. Sometimes not if it's a C-section and we have the TARP in front of us, but it's happening right in front of the medical community. And it is the interventions and birth process. That top left one is an image of an infant being born by C-section. So just looking at that, I mean, you can just see the tension, the stress, the pulling of that infant's head and neck from that doctor. I mean, that, say, if we did that, if somebody picked our baby boy or baby girl up by the head 10 minutes later after the birth process, that's not okay. But it's something that's occurring during this birth process, and we're not thinking about it. So this next one is actually a video of a live C-section.
Irritated.
Oh, there you go, little fella. Come on, buddy. All right. Ears of a girl. Ears of a girl. Make you cute for the camera. Oh, yeah. He's coming back. There you go.
All right. So, like I said, it doesn't get any better the more that I watch it. But that is the national average for C-sections is 32%, meaning 32% of our kids are brought into the world just through C-section. That's just C-section. So add any other type of intervention, it goes up much higher. The World Health Organization says that that percentage shouldn't be any higher than 5 to 10%. So it isn't because all those 32% of C-sections are medically necessary. A lot of it comes down to convenience. And it's not just convenience for the doctor. Sometimes it's for parents. I think it comes down to miseducation. I don't think doctors are truly going over the impact that these interventions actually have on our kids' health. This is a study that was done by DOs, which are osteopaths, pretty much like an MD. But what they did is they examined 100 infants, and what they found was that 99 out of 100 healthy infants, healthy newborns, right after the birth process, they found that 99 out of 100 had what they call somatic dysfunction. What we call that is subluxation. So that means that healthy newborns, right after birth, had at least one pattern of subluxation. So one pattern of stress stuck on, meaning that kid is going to start perceiving its environment as stress and start forming neurological connections that way. This is another study, this one actually more recent in the beginning of this year in March, that shows that birth interventions are negatively impacting a child's long-term health. So it's not something that they go through that birth intervention and they start experiencing health issues. A lot of these kids that I see right after birth, they appeared to be normal. They appeared to be healthy. And then a lot of these things started occurring. And it's not something that just impacts short-term health. It's impacting them long-term into their adulthood. And this is the nice thing, is that a lot of these studies are coming out now showing the impact that birth interventions have on our kids' health. And I'm not here to tear on OBGYNs. What they do is something that I wouldn't want to do. I mean, I give them credit, but it's what they're taught. They're taught to deliver babies. And they're not really taught biomechanics. They're not taught neurology too much in the medical realm. So I don't blame them. It's just something that we need to change how kids are being brought into this world. This leads us to the next D, which is disafferentation or abnormal input. So this is that body's ability, the ability of that nervous system to perceive its environment. So this is everything that's going to the brain. So disafferentation is important because we have all these little receptors in our joints and in our muscles along the spine called proprioceptors. These proprioceptors are good brain food. It's what sends input to the brain. And proprioceptors their role is perception of movement. Movement is life. If we don't move, then we're dead. It is essential to life that we move. That's how the brain perceives movement. So if we have that dyskinesia, we have abnormal movement. So if we have abnormal movement, we decrease the good proprioception and we increase that nociception or bad input to the brain, and we start getting noise. So when we increase that noise, what happens is now our kid has so much stimulation going to the brain that they may not be able to control their actions. That 1 second they're doing one thing, and then the next they just flip. And now they are having a meltdown. And it's something that they can't control. And this proprioception is important because 90% of all information that's going to the brain is coming from the spine. So if we start altering that input or having disafferentation or abnormal input coming from the spine, we're starting to alter and mingle and interfere with the information that's going to the brain. And 33% of all of the information that's going to the brain is coming from right where that arrow is pointing to, in that top part of the neck, right where those doctor's fingers are. There's going to be a nerve that I'll talk about in a little bit called the vagus nerve. If you haven't read up about the vagus nerve, I highly recommend that. The vagus nerve is, and I'll just touch about it a little bit right now, but more later. The vagus nerve is a game changer when it comes to really these kids. But that birth process impacts that delicate neurology right in that top part of the neck, because as a parent, there's one area of the baby that we're always told to protect or support, and that is the neck, because the neck on a baby does not have the muscles and the support to support it. So during that birth process, it has no protective state around it. So when we pull on that infant's neck, it's compressing on that delicate neurology and brainstem area. And then this leads us into the third D, which is dysautonomia. So I talked about with the one handout thing with the gas first brake about the autonomic part of the nervous system. So the autonomic part of the nervous system is what controls the organs, the glands, the tissues of the body. When we have dysautonomia, means that we have dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system, meaning that we're in a state of protection. And this is important because if we have dysautonomia and the autonomic nervous system controls our immune system, controls our digestive system, and that's interfered with, we may start experiencing digestive issues, constipation, diarrhea, IBS, Crohn's, or immune system. Our immune system isn't functioning, so then we're more susceptible to being exposed to bacteria and viruses, so then we get the ear infections or the upper respiratory infections or the sinus infections, and is a chain reaction. And then brings us to the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is a cranial nerve, and it is one of two cranial nerves that actually exit the skull and travels down the spine. And the cranial nerve, this vagus nerve, actually, when it exits the cranial nerve, or the cranium or the skull, it actually is only 1 to 2 centimeters away from the joints of that top part of the neck. So when we go back here, the vagus nerve exits right between that doctor's thumb and finger right there, right by that arrow. So when the doctor's pulling on the head during that birth process, it's compressing on that vagus nerve, and that vagus nerve is what supplies our parasympathetic brake pedal to our organs, to our glands, to our tissues. It is essential for the growth and development in these kids. So during the birth process, when that nerve is compromised, it shuts it off. And when it shuts the vagus nerve off, there's only one thing for the body to do, and that is to kick it into a state of protection, into a fight and flight state, onto gas pedal mode. And then this brings us to our last D, which is Dys-ponesis. So this is what most likely brought you guys here. All the meltdowns, the behavioral issues, the focus issues, the hyperactivity. Dys-ponesis is errors in output or organization. So this is everything that we have, that we see, is the effect. It's the outcome from what the brain is actually taking in. So we talk about these kids being in this sensory storm, and what we do in our office to look at how these kids' nervous systems are functioning is we use state-of-the-art technology. The technology that we use is not putting anything in the body. We're not taking anything out of the body. What we're looking at is that function of the nervous system, looking at the input to the brain and looking at that output. So this top left one there is an EMG scan. So this is looking at the muscle activity along the spine. So that, again, that muscle activity is telling us that input to the brain, and technically it's also telling us that dysponesis. So if we have, this is looking at afferentation and the output, energy output. So the top left, the far one that says normal function under the scan, that's a normal EMG. So you can see how it's all white, and how we have that bigger pattern on the bottom. When you look at the scan right next to it, you can see that it's not all white. We start getting other colors. And what, in simple terms here, white is normal, green is mild, blue is bad, red is severe, black is off the charts. This was a kid that presented, and this kid is in a state of protection. They have so much abnormal input going to the brain and so much overwhelm that no wonder that they experience behavioral issues, focus issues, because the brain can't perceive its environment properly. The next scan that we do in the office is the bottom right one, and that is a thermal scan. What this is looking at the autonomic part of our nervous system on a regional basis. So it's looking at it in each area of the body. So same terms, white good, green mild, blue bad, red severe. So you can see the picture on the left, he has severe dysautonomia. He has complete dysfunction along his autonomic part of his nervous system. This is a kid that presented with reflux, constipation, immune system issues, anxiety, OCD. I mean, just everything you can think of, and so much dysfunction when it comes to that. And you can see the scan to the right is actually a scan of him a couple months into care, and you can see the change. You can see the function of that autonomic nervous system coming back. He's not struggling with constipation anymore. His reflux is gone. He's a much healthier, not a sick kid that he was when he first came into the office. So what I'm going to do is talk about Evan. So this is Evan's story. So what I have here is this beginning one is of Evan. And this is that 5th D that I'm talking about. And this is disconnected. So when we have this Dys-kinesia, this disafferentation, this Dys-autonomia, and this Dys-ponesis, these kids aren't connected. They're not connected to their environment. They're there, and at times you get to see the kid who your kid really is, but most of the time, they're just disconnected from really what's going on in the environment. And so watch the video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Evan's case.
Bye, Aunt Kristen. See you later. No. No? Did you have fun? Did you have fun? Yes? Yes? Do you love Aunt Kristen? Say yes. Yeah. What? Bye, Aunt Kristen. We'll see you later.
All right, so you can see on here that Evan was really disconnected. I mean, this was a daily occurrence for Evan. This is how he interacted with everyone. He just, no social interaction. This is Evan's history, mostly nonverbal, 3 to 5 words, unable to follow directions, no eye contact, poor perception of his environment, very emotional, disruptive, horrible sleeper, no interactions with parents or siblings. That was his interaction with his parents and siblings. He was diagnosed with autism, and then he started chiropractic care that same day. So this scan right here is of Evan thermal scan. So this is looking at that autonomic part of the nervous system. So you can just see on there, I mean, we have red bars, green bars, blue bars. he has a lot of dysfunction, a lot of dysautonomia. He presented with constipation. He got sick a lot, and you can see that throughout his scans. Some results that Evan got after chiropractic care after 4 weeks. After one of his adjustments, he fell asleep in the parking lot. So horrible sleeper that at most maybe slept 2 hours. Just slept from 4 p.m. to 7 a.m. So a horrible sleeper just slept 15 hours. Mom was a little freaked. Like, what did you do to my kid who struggled to sleep, now just slept 15 hours? He began talking more within days, imitating speech for the first time, playing with his brother and sister, and imitating their play, because now he actually can perceive what's going on around him. So now he can imitate that same play, doing funny things to engage his family, pooping a ton, and developing a fever. These two last are essential. He was a very constipated kid. Would only go to the bathroom every like 3 days, 4 days. And that's not normal. Even to go once a day isn't a normal thing. I'm better with, like, if someone goes 2-3 times than 1 time. But to go 3-4 days without a bowel movement, his body was building up a lot of toxins in his body, because where does the rest of the body get its nutrients from? From the digestive tract. So if his body's constipated and all these toxins are building up, all those toxins are going throughout his body. So his body's just in a toxic environment. So when he started pooping, he finally started detoxing. And then he also started to develop fevers. So Evan, also very sick kid, got a lot of colds. But the thing is when he got sick, he never actually developed a fever. And this is telling us that his immune system was so compromised that his immune system didn't even have the ability to develop a fever. And sometimes I think fevers get a bad rep, but fevers are a good response. That is a response of the body. Because imagine, say, all we have is dirty drinking water, and we want to clean that. What are we going to do? We're going to heat it up. We're going to heat it up to kill all the bacteria or viruses or whatever's in that water. So when our body develops a fever, that's actually our natural mechanism of trying to kill off whatever is attacking us. So it's not actually the bacteria or the virus that's actually creating the fever. It's actually our body trying to kill whatever off. So if we try to lower that temp right away, or that fever, all we're doing for the most part is allowing that bacteria and virus to come on stronger and to thrive in that world, into our body. Now, obviously, there's certain temps where monitoring it and watching and following, I always tell parents, follow your gut. If you feel like, hey, that fever is too much, or they're starting to like really have a reaction, then intervene and do something. Take them to the doctor at that point. But a fever is a good response. His body truly started healing. And after 4 months, speaking in full sentences, exploding with development in speech, sleeping better, behaving better, potty trained, never sick, nearly back on track. And this was a video of Evan a couple months into care.
Tweet. What's that one?
Cookie.
What is it?
Cookie.
A dog?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a truck.
What's that?
A truck.
A truck?
Fast truck.
Fast truck.
Fast. The fast. So fast. Truck.
What's that one?
A cookie.
No, this this one? What's this one?
A snake.
A snake.
A good was again.
Yeah. Oh. Show me what.
So you can see, other than, I mean, obviously Evan is a completely different kid in this video than that first video. Thing that I laugh at is how, you know, as a dad, you can see the dad, he's so involved in the Play-Doh. But that's a dad thing. I come from that same realm too. I would probably do the same. But you can see that change in Evan. That from the first video to that point was about 6 months. And that was a couple months into care where we started truly, Evan started seeing these changes with his behavior, with his focus, with just how he perceived his environment. This is another video of Evan down the road.
Hey, smiley boy. What do you have?
Hi, my name is Evan.
Yeah, your name's Evan. And how old are you going to be, Evan?
4.
When are you going to be 4?
On July 17.
Oh, yay. What do you have on your face?
I have dimples.
You have dimples.
I have dimples. I know how to use them.
So when his parents came in, as a parent, you have these hopes for your kids. Like you want them to go to college and be successful or play a sport. And that's what parents should dream of and hope for their kid. What Evan's parents hoped for was to have a good day, to have hopefully the next day be somewhat better. They lost hope. But when they discovered how chiropractic started giving Evan his ability to start functioning better, they started seeing their son that they knew was there start expressing life to their full potential. And action steps that I'm going to give you are, first one is ask questions. And I can't elaborate more on this one because if you ever come, and this isn't just providers or anything, but if you ever come across a provider or someone that doesn't allow you to ask questions, then they're probably not the right person to have on your team. Because the person that you want on your team is somebody that is going to allow you to ask questions. Ask questions to why. Why is this happening? Or why do you want to do that test over that one? Or why should we do this? Like, you should be able to ask these questions. The second one is reduce the 3 T's. And those are traumas, toxins, and thoughts. So obviously we live our lives through our nervous system, and we're going to be exposed to the traumas, toxins, and thoughts. There's no way ands or ifs about it, but if we can start reducing some of that stress, maybe be diet-wise or supplementation, some of these things that can help manage this, then those are things to do. And then the last one, and I think everyone deserves, is get your child scanned. I didn't talk about the third scan that we use, but the third one is actually so beneficial and is getting so much research now, and that is what we call heart rate variability. This heart rate variability is looking at that vagal or that vagus nerve activity, because what they're finding is that the higher amount of vagus nerve or vagal activity that an individual has, the healthier they're going to be. So the lower the vagal activity, the more health issues that people are starting to experience. And why this is important is because as a chiropractor, and when we focus on that top part of the neck, that's what we're making an impact to. So there's nothing that makes a bigger impact to the amount of activity on that vagus nerve than chiropractic. Chiropractic focus is addressing that nervous system, removing interference, allowing that body to function, giving that vagus nerve, that vagal activity, the ability to be to its full potential so that your kid can live their full potential. And that's why I think every child, every individual, even parents, I think deserve to be scanned. And that is why I have an opportunity for you guys to come in and get scans. What we do is we have a 2-day process here. And a lot of times we even make this into a 3-day process, because if we know that sometimes it's hard for kids to sit still, because that day 1 process, which consists of the exam and history, can take up to an hour or 45 minutes. And we know that sometimes it can be hard to have our kids sit around for that amount of time. But we do have play areas for them to play in, but we still get that. So sometimes we split that day 1 into a phone consult where with me and the mom or dad or both of you, we discuss the history. We go over and we cover everything from now and before. So then when you do come in, we have those scans, and it takes a lot shorter period of time, because to get scans done, I mean, one scan takes 30 seconds. The second scan takes about 3 to 5 minutes, and then the other one takes about 3 to 5 minutes. So in about a 15-minute time span, you can get 3 scans done. So it shortens that day 1 appointment up a lot by splitting up into a phone consult and then coming in for scans. And then day 2 consists of the reported findings, where I go over all that information with you. I go over, can we help? If we can, how long is it going to take? What's the time commitment and the financial commitment? We go over all of that before starting care so that you know ahead of time what it's going to take. And so to get this opportunity, we have a savings for everyone that watches this webinar tonight. So if you're interested and you want to see, is this what's causing my kid to have their focus issues? Is this why they've been diagnosed with ADHD and they have the hyperactivity or the behavioral issues? Is this why we can't go out in public because we don't know what's going to happen each time that we go out? We can't take family vacations, or when we do, it's horrible. We never have a great time because we always have to put all of our attention onto the kid when they're having their meltdown, and we don't get to enjoy those times. And this is going to give you that opportunity. So by giving us a call, what we'll do is we'll honor this opportunity at a significant savings for you. And if you want to get the whole family checked, then there's even an opportunity at a savings to get that. So by calling our office, we'll honor that. You come in or you call, schedule an appointment. We'll let you know what that opportunity is. Just let us know that you watch this webinar and you want to get your child scanned. Now, answer a couple questions ahead of time. Couple frequently asked questions that I come across is, how will you scan and adjust my child? And discussing the scanning aspect, again, we're not putting anything in the body. We're not taking anything out of the body. They literally just sit there, and we have the back exposed so that we can examine and scan the back. Again, one takes less than 30 seconds. It rolls from the low back to the neck. And I tell the kids it tickles a little bit if they're ticklish, but that's pretty much it. The other one is reading the muscle activity. So really we start again in the low back and move up to the neck, but all we're doing is reading the muscle activity along each part. And all these are handheld devices. The third one, all it is putting like a finger sleeve over the finger, and it's reading the activity along the cardiovascular and the nervous system. And then adjusting, and this is a common question. So how will you adjust my child? And we have different techniques that we use in the office to accommodate and to fit each individual that comes in, because we know that every kid, every person that comes in may not feel comfortable with certain things. So our main thing is building trust with these kids and making them feel comfortable. And we have different ways of adjusting, some more manual, some we use instrumentation, some it's literally most of the time, especially with these kids, it's the amount of pressure that I would put on my eyeball without it creating discomfort. So it's not much pressure. And then how long does it take to get results? And to answer this question truthfully, it depends. Without the scans, I can't tell you how long it's going to take. I can tell you that on average, it can take 3 to 7 months. It's a process that we need. These kids' nervous systems are stuck in a state of stress, and it didn't take them to get to that point just like that. And it's not going to get them, we're not going to get them out of that state of stress just like that. So it does take time. But until we know the scans, that's when I can give you a better answer. And then the third question is does insurance cover it? And the answer to that truthfully, when it comes to these issues, insurance doesn't cover it. And that's why we have other payment options that give parents, families, the opportunity to have savings. We have payment options that give families different savings. And what most people find is that those options tend to be even more affordable than insurance. And another thing is to not try to get too much into the insurance, but this is a doctor-patient relationship, and we don't want insurance companies, if they even did cover it, to dictate what we do, because we don't want this to be a doctor, insurance company, patient interaction, because that insurance company doesn't know who you are. They don't know what you're going through. They don't have the education to know how long it's going to take. So that is all I have for you. If you guys have any other questions, type into the chat box. Otherwise, let me know. Otherwise, that is all I have. And then just again, if you guys want that opportunity, give us a call. We'll be open tomorrow at 8 a.m. Just give us a call. Let us know that you watched this webinar, and we'll honor our opportunity, our price for that. And then just type in the comment section if you guys have any questions. I'll stay on for a couple minutes. Otherwise, if no questions are coming in, then I want to again just thank you guys for joining me. I hope you guys got a lot of information from this, a lot of answers. Hopefully get more hope back, and we'll talk soon.